Hey everyone, my name is Jake VanderWal, and I will be discussing sex addiction, what it is, statistics on the matter, and the impact it has on the individual, their family, and all those who surround them. Sexual addiction is an excessive or compulsive preoccupation with sexual activities, fantasies, urges, or behaviors with complete disregard to any consequences to the individual, their partners, family, or friends. Sex addiction can negatively affect the individual's health, employment, relationships, and other parts of life. This addiction is not limited to one type of sexual experience, but can involve a variety of acts. For example, pornography, masturbation, cybersex, solicitation, and more. The symptoms of sex addiction include, but are not limited to, uncontrollable, reoccurring, and intense sexual urges, behaviors, or fantasies that occupy a lot of your time. An extreme drive to do specific sexual behaviors to achieve a release of tension, coupled with a strong feeling of guilt, shame, or remorse afterwards. Any attempt to control or reduce said behaviors are deemed unsuccessful. The use of compulsive sexual behavior to escape or avoid other issues and problems such as depression and anxiety. The continuance of dangerous behaviors or those that have serious consequences, such as contracting an infection or disease, legal issues, loss of employment, etc., and trouble establishing and maintaining healthy, stable relationships. Again, these are not the only signs of sex addiction, but these are strong signs to consider when evaluating yourself or others close to you. The definitive causes of sexual addiction are unclear, but may include several explanations, such as a chemical imbalance in the brain, a change in brain pathways, and medical conditions that affect the brain. A chemical imbalance in the brain may contribute to sex addiction because neurotransmitters help regulate mood, and if these chemicals are imbalanced, especially unusually high levels, they can cause compulsive behavior. On the other hand, a change in brain pathways can affect the severity of sex addiction. The addiction itself can alter parts of the brain that affect sexual behavior. Much like other addictions, this can cause the addict to seek higher intensities of the act to gain satisfaction or the high that the individual is chasing. Lastly, medical conditions. Complications or injury involving the brain can cause damage to parts of the brain that regulate sexual behavior and cause compulsive sexual behaviors. Some of these conditions include tumors, epilepsy, dementia, and more. Although the definitive causes are unclear, there are well-known risk factors. Accessibility to intense sexual imagery and information, especially at a young age, privacy and isolation, alcohol or drug abuse, mental health conditions, family conflict or family members who struggle with addiction, and a history of physical or sexual abuse are all risk factors for sexual addiction. Sexual addiction is a controversial topic in the medical and psychological field, as well as to the public, but it is a serious condition and very real. In the United States alone, 14 to 30 million people struggle with sexual addiction. Sex addiction is more common with men than women, but women can be sex addicts as well. The average male sex addict will have 32 sexual partners, while their female counterpart will have 22. Although women can be sex addicts as well, when it comes to treatment, they are much less likely to seek help in comparison to men. The impact that sexual addiction has on the individual is very similar to that of someone who abuses alcohol or drugs, but has very different components as well. As mentioned earlier, the individual can experience health complications, loss of employment, stable relationships, time, priorities, and more. The addiction quite literally runs their life, and everything else comes second. The individual almost always endures marital or relationship issues, as infidelity, living a double life, and lying are common. In many instances, sexual addiction is used in avoidance of life problems, but it can result in worsening some of those issues or even developing mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, etc. In some cases, a sexual addiction can escalate into voyeurism or an individual becoming an exhibitionist. And in the most extreme cases, sex addicts can begin to commit violent sex acts such as rape and molestation. This is not common though, as the majority of violent sex offenders do not commit these acts because they have a compulsion for the sexual act itself, but a need for power and control over others. The impact that sexual addiction has on an individual's partner, family, and friends is extremely significant and can be detrimental to each relationship, but especially to their partner and children. A partner of a sex addict is extremely impacted emotionally and physically. The partner can become an enabler, feel excessive responsibility, have obsessive preoccupation with their partner's addiction, experience sexual reactivity, and will go to any lengths to avoid abandonment. In other words, partners will feel as if it's their fault, make extreme compromises, numb their sexual needs, and more. The impact that sexual addiction has on children is not something to be overlooked. Children with a parent or family member who is a sex addict are typically forced into collusion and must lie to hide the addict's secret from others who are close to them. They can also be overwhelmed by constantly feeling helpless and powerless. As the children grow older, they are often at risk of low self-esteem, unhealed emotional wounds, and replication. Sex addiction is thought to be generational, and children who are surrounded by sex addiction are much more likely to experience it themselves later in life. Although sexual addiction is a generally controversial concept and disorder, it still stands true that millions of people struggle with this every day. If you or someone you know struggles with sexual addiction, reach out to a doctor immediately. There are many treatment options available for the individual and their family. Thank you.